A little over 1 year ago, Senator Harry Reid from Nevada invited President Clinton out to the Lake Tahoe area. As a result of that invitation, the Environmental Summit is occurring this weekend, with Vice President Gore and President Clinton visiting the Tahoe area basin. Today, Senator Reid invited the Channel 6 crew, along with other media, to take a tour of the Tahoe area, and we did just that. Stay with us and you can join us on that tour. As we flew into the basin, our first view was magnificent, Lake Tahoe and the surrounding basin mountains. We were right over Incline Village and Kings Beach, and we were able to see most of the North Shore Beach, as well as the forest surrounding it. Of course, we were also able to see the hotel that President Clinton will be staying in while he's here. The entire basin surrounding Lake Tahoe is in danger. The forest is dead and dying in many different areas, and that was part of the reason for this excursion, was to show Senator Reid and the media just exactly what kind of danger Lake Tahoe is in. Flying low over this lake, it's hard to imagine that this beautiful body of water is damaged. But damaged it is, and what's worse, if we do nothing to change our course, we may destroy the beauty and environmental integrity of Lake Tahoe forever. Visitors from around the world come to Lake Tahoe at all times of the year, and you can easily recognize the new visitor by their awestruck expression when they see the lake for the first time. Nestled in granite peaks which are snow-capped most of the year, the glistening sapphire blue water amazes and inspires even the most jaded guest. Writers, poets, and musicians often write about Lake Tahoe, and no one who visits the lake comes away untouched, not even the co-visitors with us on the helicopter. Yet the very beauty that draws all these visitors, literally millions every year, is the beauty that we're destroying. The clarity of Lake Tahoe, once to a depth of over 100 feet, has been reduced to a 70-foot clarity in just the last 20 years. There is no one cause, and therefore no one answer. But among the culprits are erosion into the lake, nitrogen from air pollution, and even emissions from various watercraft. These offenders create an environment for algae to grow, throwing off the ecological balance of the lake. Unchecked, this algae growth will turn our sapphire gem into just another murky lake. Indeed, this growth is already evident at the southern end of Tahoe, where our flyover confirmed what is already visible at ground level. The lake is turning green. As we continued our tour down the east shore, we were able to get close-up views of many different beaches, including Nevada Beach. Nevada Beach is perhaps where it's most evident that the lake is certainly turning green around the perimeter. It was startling to see the contrast between the green towards the shore and the blue, the deep sapphire blue that we've come to associate with Lake Tahoe, further out into the lake. As we were flying over Tahoe in our helicopters, one thing was very apparent. This was the easiest ride I've ever experienced around the lake. Typically clogged with traffic, the route around Tahoe encompasses 2 states, 3 highways, and what seems like 1 million cars at a dead stop. What would otherwise be one of the most scenic drives in our country becomes a logjam of urban assault vehicles. On summer days, it can take an hour to travel 10 miles, if you're lucky. Most weekends finds locals landlocked in their homes, unable or unwilling to join in the crawling line of cars. Although local transit opportunities have improved markedly in the last few years, addressing ways to get tourists out of their cars while visiting Tahoe has yet to prove effective. As our tour rounded the South Shore, we came across the marshlands once unimpacted by commerce and now built up with the Tahoe Keys area. This impacted one of the natural tributaries into Lake Tahoe and in fact is pointed to as one of the major causes for algae growth in Lake Tahoe. Certainly, striking a balance between the needs of the people that live here, vacation here, and live here part-time, and the needs of Lake Tahoe to be a difficult balance for President Clinton to strike. As we continued our tour along the South Shore, heading towards the West Shore, we got into more forested territory around the Cascade Lake and Fallen Leaf Lake area. In the forest surrounding Tahoe, evidence of overgrowth and beetle infestation is made clear by the dead and dying trees. In some areas surrounding the lake, well over half the standing trees are dead or dying. Several factors contributed to the decline of the forest health, including clear-cut logging at the turn of the century, biological overmanagement and improper fire prevention, drought, and bark beetles. The diseased forest stands as an unlit match, waiting for the opportunity to devastate the Tahoe Basin. As with the health of the lake, the health of the forest will depend on many considerations. Our tour now takes us up the west shore of Lake Tahoe, away from Emerald Bay, one of the most scenic and most photographed spots in the entire United States. We were able to get a glimpse of Desolation Wilderness and then head up the west shore of Tahoe towards the more heavily populated areas. As we flew over Lake Tahoe and back up the west shore, one of the things that was most striking to many people that were on the tour was the amount of population on the west shore of Lake Tahoe. Not easily seen from the road, we could see so much development from the air that you can't see any other way. Of course, it wasn't all work for the Channel 6 crew, as we got to take turns hanging off the edge of the Chinook helicopter and getting magnificent views of Lake Tahoe and the surrounding basin. Flying over the west shore and coming back over with a grand view of the lake was a good reminder that the beauty of the lake as it stands now is beauty we need to preserve forever. The decline of the lake in the last 20 years has been evidence enough that we need to stop the decline before it takes the treasure away from all of us, locals and visitors alike. And our camera crew wasn't the only one that got to enjoy hanging off the edge of the helicopter. I took my turn at the end of the tether as well. As familiar as the sights were as we rounded the rim of Lake Tahoe, it was an interesting perspective to see them from up in the air, where it all became all at once familiar and yet distant. As we reached Tahoe City on the North Shore, we hung a sharp left and headed in through the Truckee River Valley in the Highway 89 corridor. This was an especially exciting moment for the Channel 6 crew as we got to get an overhead view of the Bull's Head logging project, which we had researched just a few months before. As we bid a farewell to the lake, we got a bird's eye view, perhaps an eagle's eye view, of the Truckee River. It was splendid. Although perhaps just a little too high to jump into that water. As we reached Alpine Meadows Road, we hung another sharp turn and headed towards Alpine and then off to Squaw Valley. Seeing Squaw at this elevation in the middle of the summer can really make one hunger for the fresh powder of winter, but still an awesome sight, no matter what time of year you visit. There was no lack of activity in the Squaw Valley parking lot as the Fat Tire Festival was going on the same day we got to do our flyover. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let me hang out on the tailgate forever, and my turn was up for being strapped out on the edge of the air. The Environmental Summit is providing a unique opportunity for various government, private, and volunteer groups to come together in the process of making recommendations to President Clinton. For the last 3 months, over 1,000 people have taken part in workshops and planning, sharing hard scientific fact, opinions, conjecture, and ideas with one goal in mind: save Lake Tahoe before it's too late. Ideas have been brought to the table regarding transportation, forest health, and the decline of water clarity. President Clinton is expected to make landmark announcements regarding policies, programs, and funding to address the problems the summit has brought to the forefront. As the nation's eyes turn to Lake Tahoe, we may be in the midst of unprecedented changes. Changes which may create a model for environmentally sensitive areas across America and perhaps around the world. Maybe what makes this summit so exciting is the prospect of stopping the damage before it's too late, being proactive instead of reactive. After the announcements are made, we'll only have time to tell if what we're hearing now is environmental rhetoric or the precursor to saving Lake Tahoe now and forever. I thank you to Senator Harry Reid for allowing us to join him on this tour. Stay tuned for interviews with Senator Harry Reid an administrator for the Environmental Protective Agency and the United States Department of Transportation. All right, we're here with Felicia Marcus from the EPA. Felicia, what is your job with the EPA?
I'm the regional administrator for the 4 southwestern states and the Pacific.
That's a large territory.
It's a lot of miles.
Felicia, what is your role here today with Senator Reid?
Our role is to help be a resource to provide background information on what the federal agencies have been doing and what we can do to help aid the folks at the local level here in protecting the lake.
Have you been working in the workshops that have been coming up as a part of this environmental summit?
We've had EPA staff working throughout all the workshops, and we hosted with the Corps of Engineers the water quality workshop several weeks ago.
And what's your sense of all of this? Are we going to see some real changes come as a result of the summit?
I believe you will. I mean, I think it has already been astonishingly successful because of the intelligence, I think, and the brilliance of the folks who have invited us here, both Senator Reid in calling on the President and federal agencies to come help, but also on the incredible coalition of state, local, and private sector and public sector partners who have worked so intelligently on the problems at the lake and the solutions, and have invited us in to figure out how we can add to their already impressive efforts.
And are we going to be seeing some real concrete results as a result of this summit? Are we going to be seeing some changes around here?
Well, I believe you will. I mean, I can't say what the President will say because that's all being worked on now, but I think what you will see is the federal partners adding value to the already considerable efforts, and you will see us working together, which is no small accomplishment.
Should we be worried about government bureaucracy coming in being larger than what the Tahoe Basin can really handle, and in fact being perhaps a TRPA gone wild?
No, and that's the brilliance of this. No one has asked and no one is suggesting that the federal agencies come in and take over. The brilliance of this is that people have very specifically and intelligently said, here's what we've been working on, how can you help? And so what you will see, I think, is federal agencies coming in support of the locals, not in any big presence, but in very concrete ways of rolling up our sleeves and becoming part of the team, which I think is terrific.
As a result of this summit, have there been any issues dealt with in regards to the Truckee River, which is the only outlet for Lake Tahoe, and the downstream water quality?
Actually, not as a result of this summit, but last year we did sign a historic accord with Senator Reid, not coincidentally earlier, with the Pyramid Lake Tribe and the municipalities in the local area and the state of Nevada on water quality issues on the Truckee. So this just builds on our knowledge base and sort of moving up the river to do more, at least from an EPA perspective, so that's terrific. It's terrific to be able to add this piece to it.
Have you been also working on the Truckee River Operating Agreement, also known as TROA?
We're not as directly involved. We're in a support role, providing money through the state revolving fund and the like on that. So that's not really our big thing. The thing that's interesting it's interesting about asking the federal partners in to pay special attention, it's important, is we spend a lot of our time working on the worst problems out, whether you're talking Superfund or you're talking water quality. Generally, federal agencies are out there dealing with a federal case. They're dealing with Superfund sites, dealing with raw sewage, dealing with the worst sites and working up. The beauty of this is there's people who've come together to say, we have this precious resource over here where there's this opportunity not to be lost. Could you come in and help us here? And asking us to refocus our efforts so that we're not just working on, we need to keep working on those issues, but so we spend some time focusing on not missing an opportunity in a place as fragile as this. It's very unusual.
Nipping it in the bud before it becomes a problem, before it becomes a Superfund cleanup area.
The other issue that is remarkable about this here is that all too often, also as federal agencies, at least my agency, we are coming in where there are warring factions. And we are begging people, we are convening people to sit down at the table and start talking. And that's a lot of what we do, bringing multi-parties together and trying to convene and facilitate those groups. Done from the bottom up, and we're being asked to join, so it is a wonderful opportunity.
And you've seen that cooperation to actually take place.
It's the best I've ever seen. It's inspiring, I think, to all of us.
Oh, that's encouraging for us as well then. Ms. Marcus, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for asking.
David, one of the concerns that locals have especially is that we get funding for alternative modes of transportation, especially bicycle paths and ski areas and the like. Do you anticipate getting funding for any of that kind of transportation through this summit?
Yes, two things. We are at a juncture right now across the nation. The authorization or legislation for transportation for across the country, as I said, is being discussed right now in Washington. And flexibility on what programs can be funded was a great topic of discussion. And people are using those alternatives, such as bike and pedestrian trails and ski situations, as you mentioned. And it's also encouraging and improving funding and funding eligibility for transit programs. So we can get people to go to a parking lot, pick up a nice bus that's air conditioned or heated, and then take it into the basin area, so they don't park on the side of the street, which in many cases is illegal, and you can get ticketed or towed, and they don't walk down and destroy the beautiful the sagebrush and squaw carpet that they have there, which enables the sediment to get into the lake, and we've heard all about that. So there are some definite alternatives that will be discussed on Friday to the Vice President.
The $750 million that TRPA has asked for over the next 10 years seems like a lot of money. How do we get to that point? What do you plan on doing? What kind of political forces are at work here to make Tahoe get that money?
Tahoe gets a lot of money right now. The Las Vegas area, land has been sold there the last decade or so. It's brought $100 million to buy environmentally sensitive land in this basin. We have spent huge amounts of money from the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Our federal agencies spend a lot of money here, but we've got to start spending it smarter. We have bond issue in California, bond issues in Nevada. We have to coordinate what we're doing. We're not working together. And this resource that Nevada shares with California, and 75% of the area is owned by the federal government, we need to start working together. So just throwing out a dollar figure doesn't mean anything to me. What means something to me is, what are we going to do with the money that we have?
Senator, to look at this lake just off to your left and my right, you see beautiful clear water, and in our flight around the lake earlier, you might be tempted to ask, if you weren't familiar with the situation, what's the problem? I mean, I don't see a problem. What's the problem? How do you address that?
One of the things that I looked at very closely with our helicopter tour was the color, the clarity of the water, and it's clear. It's clear that it's not clear. You can see as you move from the shore how the change in color. The darkness, the dark green is now moving out. It wasn't this way 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So there are a lot of things wrong with the lake.
The dark green that you see at the shore is expanding out, and that's bad.
That's right. If we don't do, we've had a growth of algae in the last decade of over 400%. And unless we do something about that, algae will just take over the lake. And instead of seeing this cobalt emerald lake, you will see a green lake like you see almost any place.
Is the algae a function of all the contaminants that are ending up in the lake? Is that why it's happening?
Yes. The University of California at Davis has done extensive research. We have one man who spent over 40 years of his life studying this lake, Dr. Goldman. He and his colleagues say that if we don't do something within 10 years, this lake will be ruined. We have to have a plan. If we don't do something within 10 years, he says in 30 years, this lake will be just like any lake in the United States. And so there's need to do something. And there's a need to have a plan, a short-term plan and a long-term plan.
What about the actual forest health? You went over this area. Describe what we're seeing. What's the problem through our chopper tour?
The problems relating to this forest, there's no one problem. There are a lot of problems. One is that the foresting that took place here during the Comstock, they came in and stripped these trees. Had we been here 110 years ago, there would have been no trees on most of these mountains. They literally denuded the place. We in this basin had 4 mills, wood mills, that spent their full time cutting the trees to pieces. That's one problem. A lot of growth has taken place, it's been unnatural. And then to compound that, we've had no fires. We've suppressed fires. So, and then we had a drought. A 10-year drought. It made these trees very prone to disease, and the disease took over. we have some significant problems. We held one entire session with Secretary Babbitt and Secretary Glickman dealing with this, the health of this forest. And it's clear we're burning purposely now about 200 acres. We're going to have to burn a lot more. I wouldn't be surprised that that's one thing the President will talk about, is doing some purposeful burns in this area, saying we're going to set fires in the Lake Tahoe Basin. I think that may be something we're going to have to do.
How, is soil erosion the single most problematic situation here?
No. There is no single contributing factor to the problems in the lake. Erosion is a problem because we have artificially taken away nature's way of cleaning the water before it gets into the lake. We've taken away the wetlands. We've taken away the areas that simply were the sieve that cleaned the lake. And we're building artificial wetlands now. But no, it's not the problem. There are lots of problems.
What do you hope that the President and Vice President's visit next week brings to the region, short term and long term?
I asked the President a little over a year ago to come to the lake for a summit. I think initially he did it because he and I like each other. He said, yeah, I'll do this. But the President and his advisors got into this, and it's one of the, we hear so much negative about government today. Anyone that's been involved in this process should feel good about government because it's been a grassroots effort, and we've had involvement of hundreds and hundreds of people. So, what do I want the President to accomplish? First of all, I felt it was a real winner when he said he'll come. It will focus attention worldwide on this lake on the days that he and the Vice President are here. That is important. Focus attention on this resource that's in trouble. But also I would like the President to say, I've looked at all the advice that's been given to me, all the options that have been given to me, and here are the options that I've chosen to be my game plan. I think he should do something about coordination of activities, of everything that goes on in this area. I think he has to do something about transportation, about forest health, and I think if he does that, he'll come away a winner.
While the nation's eyes, and maybe even the world's, are turned to the Lake Tahoe and Truckee areas, we can take advantage of this time by making ourselves present, making sure that our voices are heard, our concerns are heard. We'd like to thank Senator Reid and his entourage for allowing us to join him today, and thank you for joining us on Truckee Talks.